Over a dozen scientists. Dead. Missing. Gone. Some worked on classified military programs. Some studied materials no one will talk about publicly. And some simply vanished, leaving families, careers, and questions behind. The story exploded online in early 2026. Millions of people watched. Governments were asked directly. The FBI opened an investigation. Even the White House got involved. And yet, the truth behind this story is nothing like what most people think. In this video, 3 things are going to surprise you. First, who these people actually were and why the scientist label does not always hold up. Second, the one real disappearance at the center of everything and what his own family said about it. And third, the hidden psychological mechanism that made millions of intelligent people believe something that experts say is not real. Let me show you exactly how this happened. In February 2026, a 68-year-old retired U.S. Air Force Major General named William Neal McCasland went missing in New Mexico. His wife reported him missing on February 27th. McCasland was not an ordinary retiree. He had commanded the Air Force Research Laboratory. He had briefly worked as a consultant for an organization linked to UAP, Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, research. And he had, at one point, held high-level security clearances. The internet noticed immediately. Within days, people started connecting his disappearance to other deaths, other missing persons, other researchers. A list began circulating online. 10 names, then 11, then more. All of them linked, according to posts spreading across social media, to classified government work, to UFOs, to advanced energy research, to material science that the public was supposedly never meant to know about. Here is the first mini-surprise. The cases on that list span 4 years. They involve different countries, different fields, different circumstances. Some were ruled natural deaths. Some were homicides with identified suspects. Some were suicides. Nobody on the original list knew each other. Second surprise. Multiple families of the people named publicly begged the internet to stop. They said connecting their loved ones to this theory was causing them fresh grief and humiliation, and yet the story kept growing. Now here's where things get really interesting. The story did not stay on fringe forums. It went mainstream fast. By March 2026, major outlets, News Nation, The New York Post, The Daily Mail, were running full segments on the missing scientists. Political commentators with millions of followers were treating the list as evidence of something coordinated and sinister. Then a Fox News reporter raised it directly at a White House press briefing on April 15th. The White House press secretary responded on the record, saying the White House was actively working with all relevant agencies and the FBI to holistically review all of the cases together. The FBI director himself said publicly, if there's any connections that lead to nefarious conduct or conspiracy, this FBI will make the appropriate arrest. That statement alone sent the story into overdrive. Think about what just happened there. A fringe internet theory, born from one missing person case, had, within 6 weeks, triggered a formal FBI review and a White House statement. That is not normal, and it tells you something important about the moment we are living in. But here is what those headlines left out. The sheriff of Bernalillo County, New Mexico, where McCasland lived, stated clearly there was no evidence indicating foul play in his disappearance. McCasland's own wife posted on Facebook that since his retirement 13 years earlier, her husband had held only commonly held clearances. She wrote directly, "It seems quite unlikely that he was taken to extract very dated secrets from him. His family was not hiding something. They were asking people to stop. But if you think that's crazy, Wait until you hear this. So how did a list of unconnected deaths become a national security conversation? The answer involves something called apophenia. It is a psychological term. Simple definition: the human tendency to see meaningful patterns in completely random information. Medical sociologist Robert Bartholomew, who has studied mass belief phenomena for decades, looked at the missing scientist story and identified it as a textbook example. Our brains are pattern recognition machines. It is one of our greatest strengths, but it also means that when we are shown 10 names, 10 job titles, and 10 tragedies, even if they have nothing to do with each other, our minds naturally start looking for the thread connecting them. Skeptic magazine editor-in-chief Michael Shermer described the process precisely. He said conspiracy theorists began searching for anyone who died or disappeared, then combing through their biographical details for any connection to UFOs, military, defense, space, aerospace, propulsion, and found exactly what they were looking for. Because if you look hard enough, you will always find something. Writer Benjamin Radford named it even more bluntly: mystery-mongering data mining. I'll explain why this matters so much in just a moment. Because this also tells us something uncomfortable, not just about fringe believers, but about how easily verified, official-sounding details can be assembled into a story that feels completely real. This brings us to the most shocking discovery of all. Here is the part most coverage missed entirely. The missing scientist story was not just a viral moment. It became a political instrument. Attention on the theory was significantly amplified by a sitting U.S. congressman, Representative Eric Burleson of Missouri, who, according to the Kansas City Star, had built his public profile largely around UFO-related topics. The House Oversight Committee formally requested information from federal agencies about the cases on the list. A fringe theory had entered official government proceedings, and once it did, the feedback loop accelerated. Congressional attention made it more credible to casual observers. More credibility brought more media coverage. More coverage brought more names to the list. At one point, according to The Atlantic, the list included an advanced materials researcher at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, who had simply gone missing while hiking. His connection to classified science was his job title, nothing more. This is the core of what made the story so powerful and so dangerous at the same time. It weaponized real grief, real families, real tragedies, and wrapped them in a narrative that gave millions of people the feeling that they were seeing something the government did not want them to see. But the experts who actually studied the cases, journalists, scientists, sociologists, reached the same conclusion. There was no coordinated pattern. The deaths and disappearances were unrelated. The scientist's label was applied loosely and inconsistently. And the timing that made everything feel clustered was, according to The Atlantic, partly the result of cases being incorrectly reported as happening close together when they had actually occurred across 4 separate years. The story felt real because it was built from real pieces. That is exactly what makes it so hard to dismiss and so important to understand. So what does all this mean for us today? This story is not just about missing scientists. It is about how information moves in 2026 and how fast a narrative can outrun reality. First implication: institutional trust is at historic lows. When people genuinely believe the government is silencing researchers, they are not just being paranoid. They are expressing something real, a deep erosion of confidence in official institutions. That erosion did not come from nowhere. It was built over years of real scandals, real cover-ups, and real failures of transparency. The missing scientist theory filled a trust vacuum. It gave people a story that explained their unease. That is not stupidity. It is a symptom. Second implication. The media amplification problem is getting worse. Major outlets that covered the story as though it had credibility, without the skeptical framing it deserved, contributed to its spread. When a Fox News reporter raises a fringe theory at a White House briefing, the theory gains a kind of legitimacy it has not earned. The question itself becomes the validation. Every outlet that covered the story, without prominently featuring the rebuttals from families and experts, made it harder for ordinary viewers to tell where the evidence ended and the speculation began. Third implication, and this one is personal, especially if you share content online. The families of the people named on that list asked publicly, repeatedly, and with visible pain for it to stop. Real people, real grief, being used as props in someone else's theory. Before any of us shares a story like this, the question worth asking is not, does this feel true? The question is, what is the verified evidence and who gets hurt if I am wrong? One disappearance, a retired general with a health condition whose own family said there was nothing sinister, sparked a national conspiracy. That is the power of a single story with the right emotional ingredients. Before we wrap up, there's one final thing you need to know. Here is the detail that reframes everything. As of June 2026, human remains discovered in a New Mexico forest were identified as Melissa Casillas, a worker at Los Alamos National Laboratory who had been missing for nearly a year. Her case had been cited on the missing scientists list. Her remains were found, not in mysterious circumstances, not with signs of silencing, in a forest, nearly a year after she disappeared. Her family had been living with that absence the entire time. The internet turned her into a data point in someone else's theory. That is where the real story lives. Not in the question of whether a secret government program is eliminating researchers, but in what it means when grief becomes content, when real loss gets recycled into engagement. The FBI investigation is still ongoing as of this video. The House Oversight Committee is still asking questions. Whether any actual evidence of coordinated wrongdoing emerges remains to be seen. If it does, that will be reported, and it will deserve full coverage. But right now, the evidence says unrelated tragedies, a pattern-hungry public, a low-trust information environment, and political figures with incentives to amplify uncertainty. That combination produced a story that felt like a revelation. It was not. But understanding why it spread, that actually is. We started this video asking what is really behind the missing scientists' investigation. The answer is this. The investigation itself is the story. Not what it found, but what it reveals about how we process fear, loss, and uncertainty in an age when everything can become a theory. If this opened your eyes, let us bring it together. One real disappearance, a retired Air Force general with documented health issues and no active classified access, sparked a national conspiracy theory inside of weeks. A list of unrelated deaths across 4 years was framed as a coordinated pattern. The FBI opened a review. Congress asked questions. The White House issued a statement, and families of people named on the list begged publicly for it to stop. Experts studying the phenomenon, sociologists, skeptics, investigative journalists, found no evidence of coordination. They found pattern recognition running ahead of evidence. They found grief being converted into content. They found a media ecosystem that amplified before it verified. That is the real story. And it matters, because the next version of this story is already forming somewhere online right now. If you want to be the kind of person who sees through narratives like this before they take hold, subscribe. That is exactly what this channel is for. Not to tell you what to think, but to show you how to look. One question for the comments. Where do you think the line is between healthy skepticism of institutions and falling into a conspiracy spiral? It is a harder question than it sounds. Drop your answer below. And when you are done here, watch our next video, because there is a separate story about how governments actually do keep secrets from the public, with documented evidence that is far stranger than any theory. That one is all facts, and it will surprise you more.